If I told Richard how long I plan to read today, he might not have to let me do this. Don't be scared. I slashed it up as much as I could to keep it under an hour. And it may be fairly well under an hour, but I kept getting phone calls today, so I got lost track of time a bit. When my sister Roxanne and I were small, highways were also small. And outside the city limits, a farmer's fields often pressed right up to the ditch at the edge of the road, with his unused horses standing there, watching the cars go by. There were so many idle horses to be seen in those days that we passed the time in the back of my father's Ford Super Deluxe, counting them. Roxanne, who was older, taller, stronger, and crowned with wide, rolling waves of golden hair, got the beautiful ones. I got the rest. The farmers in those years just after the war can't have been as hard-hearted as I used to suppose, because most of them owned tractors by 1948, and yet there were the old plow horses dreaming at the fence, with their hairy feet as big around as young tree trunks, and a sagging lower lip that always had a few catfish whiskers poking out. These were the ugly horses, and although I was winning with them, there were 3 of them to every beauty, I longed to be counting up slender white horses with ankles like wine glasses, whatever the price. By sheer accident, Roxanne and I both ended up in the horse business. I'll spare you the details. Bad boyfriend in my case, bad husband in hers. Let's just say that both of us in the long run found horses brought a more reliable return than even our most charming male companions. I make my living telling other people how to bet if they are fool enough to read my columns. Roxanne is the one who actually knows something about horses. In her last few years before the fall, she had the #1 trotting horse broodmare sire, Peter the Handsome, on her Michigan farm, and she has spent about as much time with her arm up to the bicep in a horsing mare's vagina as I have at my typewriter, with more impressive results. You may have heard of the fine little race mare Centripeter, winner of the Sire Stakes and mother of champions for Penrose Avery. She was Peter the Handsome's first daughter. Well, Roxy bred her, and a few years later along came Center Party, Pertinax, and Trumpeter, and others of that brilliant and honest line. Also in that line, and no less honest, was a hideous mare by the name of Strumpet, and she's the reason I'm telling you this tale. Roxanne's fortunes went up, and this being horse racing, her fortunes came down again. Good times or bad, Roxanne had trouble keeping trustworthy help on her spread on St. Joe Highway, west of Sand Lake. Blenheim Farm might sound like the ancestral home of some American branch of the Churchills, an aroma of class that was not lost on Roxy, but was in fact named after the best-selling convertible sofa of her ex-husband Morty's furniture company in Grand Rapids, for which the horse farm had been at first a tax shelter, then her payoff in their divorce. Blenheim's barns and pastures occupied 203 acres of flat, dry, former prairie between Trufant and Sand Lake, where not even the Amish could scrape by anymore on what the soil alone produced, so that one of Blenheim's loyalist hands over the years was an Amish girl named Lizzie Yutzy, who came to work every morning from the Yutzy farm on Whitefish Road, a mile and a half away, on an ancient, rusty balloon tire Schwinn. Cheerful in a grave sort of way, quick and tidy at mucking a stall, little Lizzie nevertheless could not stop a fresh-bred mare from busting out of the stocks and backing over Roxanne if the spirit so moved her. That's how Roxanne got her limp, from a shattered pelvis when she was 45. So she learned her lesson, and ever afterwards, Roxanne had Bump. Roxanne does not remember exactly when Bump came out of the shadows and started to help around the barn. The truth was she sort of knew he had been there a good long while already, but she preferred not to know it. So Roxanne being Roxanne, she didn't. His hiding, her not knowing it, worked for a long time, since he had always been a hidden child. Bump's mother, Ida Curtain, Ida used to say, "That's Curtain," it's spelled just like curtain. "That's Curtain the French way, rhymes with Pertain," was the fugitive of some desolate family farm up by Bad Axe. Bump, in flannel shirt and filthy gray work pants, summer and winter, had that puzzling grimace. Was it fierce or frightened, with a pennant of yellowish spit in the right-hand corner of it, which he couldn't hold shut, even as silent as he mostly was, because of a cleft palate. Why didn't Ida get that fixed for him, I asked Roxanne when she complained about her predicament 35 years later. Blenheim Farm down to 2 employees, a former office manager who came in one Saturday a month to work the antique computer, and Bump. There must have been government programs for that even back then, for school-aged kids at least. By this time, Ida was long dead, complications of diabetes, and Bump living in a down-and-out motel on St. Joe Highway, where it crosses Old State Route 37, outside of Sand Lake. Well, Ida liked to brag she never took a penny from the welfare. That was one thing, although it wasn't strictly true. But food stamps had been spotted by many at the Sand Lake IGA, going in and out of her yellow alligator leatherette Freestyle Products tote. She had the 2 boys whose paternity she never explained, but either they came from 2 fathers or they came from the air, so different were they. All 3 of them went by Curtain, rhymes with pertain. And all 3 of them were often seen at the free clinic in Whitefish. Roxanne was pretty sure there had been at least 1 childhood surgery with Bump, maybe 2, that obviously didn't take. Or possibly Bump would have been far homelier without them, who knows. It was his talk, or his lack of it, his mashed, unconsonanted rumbling, that was the hopeless part of the case. Ida needed to have her boys with her when she took her freestyle health and beauty products orders and made her deliveries. That was the other thing. As a result, neither boy saw the inside of school with regularity. And somehow Truancy Court in Montcalm County chose not to make a fuss about it, which was almost understandable in Bump's case, but why Billy should have been excused or overlooked was more of a puzzle. A golden, sweet-natured boy like that, dressed up in a baby blue bow tie and cable-knit red vest, who loved to clamp one arm across his stomach, one behind his back, and bow to the housewives who ordered Everyday Miracle Foundation and Secret Garden spray sachet, and baked him brownies besides. A boy like that was everything kids nowadays aren't. Grateful, eager, full of please and thank you and childish compliments. School was made for boys like Billy, wasn't it? Only later on, Roxanne realized there might have been something a little off about the child. So that's how it happened. Roxanne can't tell you just when Bump first came out of the dark and snatched on the halter of Miss Jean Brodie, a giant mare that had Lizzie Yutzy pinned in the back of the stall. But of Billy's ascent from the passenger seat of the Valiant idling in the driveway, up to the barn, then to the office single-wide, later even to the little trainer's trailer back in the North 40 behind the scrubby half-mile track, she held on to a kind of vision. There had been the wind raising and lowering that angel shock of golden hair, the blue eyes shining and the skinny arm sticking out of the very white shirt sleeve, waving goodbye with the order sheet for New Life Dead Sea bath salts. As usual, Roxanne had filled it out herself, since Billy didn't count good. The rust-embossed lime green sedan is backing out of the driveway, and suddenly Roxanne hears herself shout from the open screen door, "How would you like to work for me, Billy? You know, after school," although she knew full well that Billy hardly ever went to school. "And you can learn about horses all you want." Roxanne never offered boys brownies, you see. She offered them jobs. Girls, too, if they caught her eye. Of heavy, dirty, mildly dangerous minimum wage work in the barns or pastures, she had or used to have more than enough to go around. When Peter the Handsome was king of the front paddock and her reputation as a breeder was at its peak, there might be as many as a dozen teenagers working about the place. She hired them if they had that something about them, a gleam of life beyond the flat, pre-humiliated realism of unentitled teenagers of our time and place, a light which just about never panned out. Or so I must conclude after all the years I listened to Roxy complain about the kids who worked in her barn, how they never took the initiative or did more than the least she asked, if that. They rarely finished high school, these kids. They were the ones who had been raised in those homely little 1.5-story white frame or dingy shingle bungalows that sparsely dot the back highways of Michigan. They came to work red-eyed from smoking marijuana.